Hi, everyone. It's Carolyn Moor from the Modern Widows Club, and I have a special guest today, Gina Strasser, who is the Executive Director of Modern Widows Club. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you for having me.
This week, Gina has her Angelversary, which is the day that our partners or spouses passed away. And that's what we call it, Angelversary. And we started talking that this year is Gina's 7th year. And for those of you who know me and have heard me speak at our Widow Empowerment event, you know I have this theory about the 7-year increments, that it takes the biological body 7 years to actually regenerate itself. And I really feel like the journey of widowhood takes about 7 years to rebuild your life. And then the second 7 years ends up being the application. And then the third 7 years ends up being educating and coming back and becoming a teacher or an advocate or a leader in some kind of way. So when Gina said it's my 7th year, I was like, wow, you've come and I want to tell a little bit about the history of Gina and how she found me, how she found the organization. And I just want to let her go ahead and share her history. But I think it's important for you to get to know the faces and the people who work at Modern Widows Club behind the scenes. So Gina, tell us a little bit of story about how you found me and the organization.
Well, I was searching for something that would give me the ability to envision what my future might look like without my husband, without the dreams that we had had. And back then, 2014, there wasn't a lot. For widows, there were a lot of books, and I read constantly, to the point where my friends were like, "Did you just finish another widow's book?" And not only would I read, I would reach out to these authors because I was so desperately looking for, okay, what happened next? So you still have hope. There's life after this. And I found Modern Widows Club in July, 2 days after what would have been my husband's birthday. And we were in communication. You were so kind to spend time communicating with me through email. And I had the opportunity to meet you when I traveled to Orlando with my son in October of 2015. And after I heard what your plan was for widows and really changing just both domestically and internationally, I was all in. My background is nonprofit. It was my original position back in the early 90s. And I knew I must be able to do something to help. And so I started volunteering. And 4 years later, I was incredibly excited to accept the position of executive director. And now I get to work with you almost every day.
Yes, it's a completely different, relationship for us now because we work and we're both Wisters, widow sisters, which, part of you coming on, we trademarked that name. And there's so many good things that have happened. But back then, I remember just thinking, oh, she's coming to Orlando. She wants to just have dinner. Well, I have to eat. So, yes, of course I want to meet you. And I really knew very little about you. And that's how a lot of connections happen here at MWC. But you had this nonprofit experience and I didn't. My background, I've been an interior designer for 25 years. Starting a nonprofit, my only experience really was having been on the board at New Hope for Kids, our local grief center, for 12 years. And so that was my only knowledge. So not sure if I would recommend anyone started a nonprofit who didn't have any background anymore, but you became this silent, person in the background with me. Everybody needs someone they can ask dumb questions to, right? Why is it done this way? I knew how to run a business, did not know how to run a nonprofit. So you came and sort of were this silent person behind me, making me look good on the front side as if I knew what I was doing. And I was so excited to find you. So we both kind of, it was just a beautiful coincidence that we found each other because we both gave each other something that we needed. And then, of course, after volunteering with us for several years, The opportunity came because of some funding that we received, that we were able to hire you. And instead of me being I always say, Gina's a way better executive director than I ever was, because that's not my strength, but it certainly has been yours. Um, and so now you have this personal experience of working every day to create this vision and mission, but still on the same level, we are widows, right? We have angelversaries. And so that's coming up for you this week. How are you facing that?
I think, oh my goodness, 7 years. And I was familiar with the idea of body regenerating and, very, very into nutrition and, what I was feeding my husband and my son and things like that. But, I don't know that I had a vision past 5 years. I think what I wondered was, how will I make it past 5 years? How am I going to teach my son how to drive? But and I guess I just kind of figured if I got to that 5-year mark, maybe things would fall into place. I think it was just, even now, life is exciting. And I don't know that I ever could have thought life would be exciting again. And now I look at the future, and my son is, he's applying to universities, and we're waiting for those responses to come in. And I have no idea what my life is going to look like in August once he goes off to school, to be honest. But what I can say is, this is a life I never anticipated on living. And I'm grateful when we are in our meetings and we joke about who knew widows would laugh and cry and smile and, so often. And that's what makes it different. We are a club. And I think that's what people, when they become involved with our organization, they're going to see, not only do you get the support of envisioning, how do I get through this week? Or, here's a parenting issue I have, or how am I going to travel alone? And I think when we really start looking at our followers and our members, we see, as we were talking about earlier today, literally hundreds of years of experience of being widowed all coming together in our Inside Look newsletter and things like that. So when I think about where am I going to be in 14 years, I just can't even imagine. I know what we've got planned, and what we're really strategically looking at as an organization. But personally, I think it's still, I'm lucky to have the opportunities that I have, because I can be me, and that is not dependent on the future that I didn't get to experience with my husband.
Right. And both of us lost our husbands through accidents. I was actually involved in the accident with my late husband, Chad, and you weren't, but it was from an automobile type accident. You can share just a little bit about that if you wish, just to, for the ladies.
It was just a morning, and it was actually, our family was big into having parties to get us through the winter blues. So you get through the holiday season and you start having a lot of fun holiday parties, Chinese New Year, St. Patrick's Day. I'm Irish. That was a huge one for us. I was, the year that my husband died, a day before, it was St. Patrick's Day. We had all of our friends over, and Monday was actually St. Patrick's Day. And then Tuesday morning, my husband died. And it was just a normal morning. We were running late. We would share my son went to charter school, so it was never a neighborhood school. So we would share that freeway drive. And my son really wanted to go to school with Daddy that morning, and he wasn't ready. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to jump in the car. And I'm like, you'll see Daddy when we get home, it's fine. So I took him to school, and I actually drove past the accident before the paramedics got there. And we live in a beautiful neighborhood. It was a beautiful morning. And there's always walking groups. And so I saw a group of people gathered at the bottom of the hill, and I thought, oh, great, look, another walking group club. It's spring. It's a beautiful day. And 2 hours later, I found out that they were there because they were trying to help.
Wow.
And he died on the scene. And we were lucky, you know, it was just a freak accident. And
how
you always wonder what would have been.
Yeah, of course.
So, but what I knew was because my sister had died 17 months before my husband, I knew that that initial grief in my body very much went into shock, just extreme shaking, you know. I knew that portion of it would pass. And I knew that there was life after death.
Right.
I just didn't know what life would be. And that, in becoming a widow and losing your spouse, I think that is one of the hardest things. And you hear about journaling. Oh my goodness, I journaled every day I made it through. Right. And then it was the weeks, and then it was I survived another month and a year. And now I go back and I usually read, okay, here's where I was at year 4. Here.
Yeah, I just shared with on social media mine how I describe I'm sad for my future. I wrote those words, and I just thought, here I am 21 years later, and I'm not sad for my future. I'm enlightened because of what has happened to me with losing Chad. I've become probably everything he saw in me and loved about me. And there's no greater honor than creating a legacy. But I'm just like you. 2 weeks later, my life was sad. There was no future for me. And I secretly struggled in a lot of emotional pain privately, at least for 6 years. And so, you know, until, of course, I was featured on Shalom in the Home, and they had me do these videos, and I heard myself. 6 years later, I went, what is it going to take for me to start engaging in what we, you know, at Modern Widows Club have created, this hope, heal, grow, lead pathway forward, right? I was hoping, I was healing. Was I growing? Not really. Why? Because I was my own worst enemy, because that's how I saw myself. My future was, there is no future, just like what you said. So that's so powerful that you, first of all, acknowledge and recognize that, because until that happens, you can't move into the growth opportunity that we talk so much about here at MWC. And we are examples of that. The growth then turns into leading what? It might be your personal life. It might be you as a mother. It might be you as a family member, a friend, an employee. It might be a widow advocate, right? And that's what we see here at MWC. But those early journal, you look back, we love people to share their early journal entries and to create journals, because that exercise in itself is a way for you to express when we would rather you get it out than keep it in. Right.
Well, it's the idea, like, okay, I don't know, this is recommended, like we were talking about earlier. This is recommended. This is what they say I should do. And I was so lucky. I had so much support from my community, but I was still so lonely because, you know, I was 36. I think you were 36. You don't have a lot of widowed friends. I don't know that I knew any widows that were younger than 65. And that feeling is lonely too.
True.
So I think one of the number one questions now answering our hotline, the 444 widow, is, will this get better?
Oh, wow.
And my response is, it does get better. It's different. It's different. Nothing you can anticipate. And that's the truth.
It is true. It's, you know, I personally know thousands of widows, and will continue to get to know thousands of widows. This is, you know, my lifelong calling, it's the only way I can explain it, because leaving a whole profession of interior design that I went back to college in my 20s to do, from being a nurse, a pediatric nurse, yeah, to leave that love that I had for architecture and design to do this full time, can only be called a calling. And same for you, and really same for everyone. Lynn and Cindy and Natalie and Sunshine and, all of the women. And so it's like, when I first met you, I went, why is it so hard to make nonprofits work? And then the double whammy of, oh, by the way, there's not very many widows, even nonprofits out there thriving. And I remember early on, I went, why aren't women paid a fair wage for doing such hard work, especially something like ours that is groundbreaking, that is, the tip of the arrow. We're innovative. We're revolutionizing how widows are served. And that's something really valuable, because we're actually able to, one widow at a time, create stronger communities. We know we're doing this, right? Through all of our programs and events and our podcast and our outreach and everything we do here. We talk a little bit about how many more widows we actually served during this pandemic.
Oh my
When you started, and then like a couple months later, right? The pandemic started.
Well, exactly. It's kind of like becoming a widow, right? You get married, you think you know what you're entering, and then all of a sudden you're a widow. Well, I had been volunteering for the organization for years. I had an idea of what I was stepping into. We went to Austin and we had that strategic planning. And, 6 weeks later, I was supposed to be going to the UN, the Commission on the Status of Women. And we moved into a virtual world and we transitioned the programs and the services to immediately meet the needs we knew we couldn't meet in person. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this virtual world. As we're beginning to come back into a life where you can feel comfortable meeting and gathering and things like that, I think one of the best things for us has been, especially when we launched that support series, is being able to see in the eyes of widows, not just domestically, but internationally, and being able, you get to watch that growth. And you can see in a fresh widow the emptiness and the timidness of joining a group and really beginning to communicate. And we never ask anyone to share or do anything they're not comfortable with, but you can see the light begin to shine again. And our new logo represents 59 being the average age of a widow, and how we come together in such a unique way, and we're all so different. And I believe that these are the lights that are shining of our Wisters worldwide. We are where widows go. And the ability, I've always said that this is my ikigai. If I had to be a widow, I couldn't honor
Yes.
my husband in a better way, and my passion. I would sit outside and I would stare at the sky and wonder how I could make this better for other people. And bereavement leave, that has been for years my bucket list. And it's funny how your bucket list changes when you become a widow, right? Like, who would have guessed that was my passion? But it is. And then as we're getting into this medical research, the
Yes.
mental and the physical aspects of
Yeah.
becoming a widow, and looking at what happens in that first 12 months, and what can we do, what can fresh widows do, what conversations should they be having with their primary care physicians, what should they be watching out for. I think the ability to possibly change how research on widows
Mhm.
is done,
Yep.
and then the effect of that actually being able to go into the medical community and saying, here's what we know,
Right.
what can be done. And that, I mean, that's what we strive for every day.
But can you imagine if all the items on our petition are fulfilled, right? And can you imagine if someone who's newly widowed goes to their primary care physician, and there's actually a protocol there for widows? Because brain fog is so undiagnosed, which then turns into being undiagnosed for anxiety or depression or PTSD. We know this. This is, because we have actually surveyed and listened to literally thousands of widows in this organization. We've been honored to be able to take that content and then find people to help research, or find people who, just like Jordan, creating this widow empowerment quiz that's on our new website. Um, where do I fall in the hope, heal, grow, lead pathway, right? If I'm in one of these phases, and Modern Widows Club has an e-course for that, that would be the first thing I would do, is go over and take that course. There was nothing like that. When I became widowed, it was before September 11th. So the only young widows we knew about were like Jackie O and Lady Bird Johnson. Well, I don't even think Lady Bird Johnson was super young. But the point is the younger widows, or the widows in general in media, were celebrities. We didn't know anything about the millions. Like, literally, when I became widowed, there was probably 10 million widows in the United States. Well, where were they in my personal life? There was no internet. There was no social media. Social media didn't start coming around until, for us, 2008, 9, 10. And luckily, I got involved in all of that because of my interior design business, right? So when Modern Widows Club started in 2011, it was something very simple. I'm willing to mentor two widows. And that really turned into these, 45,000 widows that we actually are serving today, whether that's through social media or any of our programs. And there was no way I could have, known that was going to happen. But the concept of a widow being there for another widow, and then society and communities supporting widows organizations because they're doing the good work that didn't exist before now. That is really, it's so inspiring every day. We know, we come to work every day and talk every day, and the massive emails and the amount of people that find us and want to partner with us, it's extremely fulfilling work every day to know that you're creating something that ripples out in goodness. It's not just about the widows, it's about you were talking about your son. I have two daughters. All this is shared in, the clubs and the clubs, and the social media and the private pages we have. I didn't have that. So I was so lost. And then when we found Dr. Stephen Southwick, we realized out of his book that there's 10 components of building resilience, and 2 of them you have to go outside yourself for: imitating resilient role models, and attracting and giving social support. Modern Widows Club fulfills those. I had done the other 8 up until that point, but until 11 years into my widowhood, I knew I needed a community, and I knew I needed these others, but I couldn't find them. And so we're really fortunate today because we have this organization, and every day we not only provide outreach and services, but we fundraise so that we can still be here, because too many nonprofits for widows go inactive around year 7. There's that magical number again.
Well, and what we provide is the community. Like, here's the community. You don't have to search for it. And
Right.
then here's what our pillars of healthy widowhood.
Correct.
It's not just your physical health or your mental health. It's the entire holistic approach. And then really meeting the needs. I think modern is exactly what our Widows Club is. We're revolutionizing the way the world sees widows, but we're also revolutionizing the way widows are served.
Correct.
Through our surveys, through sharing information, sharing your stories with us allows us to share that so that the world has a perspective on what we're going through. Because solo parenting, that is an entirely new aspect that until, a lot of divorced people.
Yes.
There's a difference between solo parenting and parenting with your ex.
Yes.
I think, you're worried about those decisions. Like, I'm the parent here. So to have this club where you can go and you can bounce ideas off of people, or you can, look at, okay, what might be a great idea, or how do I deal with Social Security when they turn 18, or what does FAFSA look like, or, there's so much, signing your children up for sports, there are so many aspects of widowhood that until we start opening people's eyes to these things, and we know that this change has to happen in the United States to begin creating the change in other countries. And that's Office of Widowed Persons. Can you imagine? We talk about getting that petition in those lists together.
Oh,
yeah, that is where
imagine,
change
Gina.
happens. Look at our emails, from 2015, 2016, and knowing where this organization could go. And we had no idea the amount of new spouses we would be serving because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But my heart, and this has been a difficult year, but when I go to bed at night, I am grateful that I know we didn't just touch one widow's life today. We inspired many Wisters.
Yes.
It's evident through our social media.
Yeah, and in early on, our theme was moving forward and reaching back, and you came into the organization right when that was a lot of what I would hashtag, and you're a perfect example of that, right? You came on board. You found a mentor. You are a direct result of our organization. You found a mentor. You found a community. You found resources. You showed up and took part in those, and look where your life took you. When the opportunity opened itself, you are now employed as a widow. And of course, that was always a big dream for me, because I thought, who better to hire than widows who have special skills in these areas? But until, of course, we received the funding for that, it wasn't a possibility. So we don't know what the future holds, but I know that innovation is definitely something that is very innate for widows, doing this whole solo parenting and managing households and working. And it really doesn't matter. It can be September 11th. It can be the housing crash. It can be the pandemic. Having a community around you to walk that journey is so valuable. And even myself, having hardships last year, I reached out to this community and they were there for me. And so even me, the founder of the organization, has now been able to partake in the beauty from the ashes that we have all found ourselves in. So I just want to say thank you for all that you do every day. And I'm pretty sure that it's kind of nice to have someone else be so concerned about widows along with you, because so many years I did this solo, sort of carrying the flag for widows and advocacy and leadership development and all of that. But now I feel so supported in the vision and the mission. And that has a lot to do with you. And so I think that on your 7-year anniversary, Carl would be extremely proud. And I know that your son is. And literally thousands of widows' lives have been impacted in a positive way because of who you are. And so I just wanted to thank you. And we just wanted to kind of have a conversation today between the two people that run MWC every day. And I'm truly grateful, because it has been really life-changing for this organization.
Well, I honestly just can't imagine how filled your heart must be, because when I walk into an event with our Wisters, with our members, and see the joy and see the laughter and see people overcoming fears that they didn't know that they had to even overcome, for you, that you created this. I'm so thrilled to walk by your side and be the backup or be the operations of your brilliance and your creations. But I can't thank you
enough. I can't thank our Whisters enough. We are a club. We unite. And no, it's not the place you ever envision being.
No.
But I can tell you on behalf of Carolyn and I that if you're here, you're lucky to be here, because the feeling of not having this for me was extremely empty.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
The
So
determination it took to get here. Crappy we learned this
I
year.
am pretty determined. It's not a no, it's a not yet. That's like my theme. But my new saying is onward and upward. So we just wanted to create this conversation today to share with you this week. And if you want to reach out to Modern Widows Club, you can reach us at support@modernwidowsclub.org. You can also call our 844 for a widow hotline, and Gina will be the one that will actually answer that, or possibly someone else. But also go to, modernwidowsclub.org and start looking around and clicking and see all the amazing new services and clubs and resources that we have. I think you're really going to enjoy the new website. So much love to all of you, and have a great day.